Welcome to the JM Report. I am your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 34, coming to you from CSB Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And I hope everyone has enjoyed their Thanksgiving week and their Thanksgiving dinner. I know many of us at this point in time are still with family, out of town celebrating, and you know what? There's still time left to have more fun and not worry about going back to work on Monday or maybe Tuesday for those who are slick enough to add that extra day or vacation time off. So kudos to you guys. It has been a very long week. I unfortunately suffered a loss in my life, and still hurts, but as they say, the show must go on, and I'm doing everything I can to mourn when I need to, and stay busy, mostly to distract myself and not let other emotions or feelings get in the way when not necessary. But we're all human. We all are happy, sad, mourn when we need to, and can no one tell you any different. So for those who reached out, I want to personally thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really meant a lot and really appreciate it. So thank you very much. So as promised, I have reviews for WWE's long 4-day weekend. Just last week, matter of fact, it's hard to believe. It honestly feels like forever. Not only since I've been here in the studios, but the fact that so much has gone on, at least in the WWE side of things, and they just got done with a run at Staples Center in Los Angeles with NXT, Survivor Series, Raw, and Smackdown. And I will just run down here the results for the first two shows and a little highlights from Raw and Smackdown, and where, if any of it, where does it all lead moving forward? So NXT Take Over War Games 2018. Overall, I'm just going to say the show was an A+, and I'll probably end up saying that each individual match was amazing, awesome, it was excellent. I'm just going to say they all were. And I'm just not going to repeat myself over and over again just to point that out. But there was an impromptu match earlier, matter of fact, at the very beginning of the show, as Cassius Ohno, during the kickoff, was threatening to expose Matt Riddle in a match that there was originally scheduled to have for an NXT taping for this past Wednesday night. But many thought that by jumping the gun to get the crowd all riled up and excited right off the bat. So it was an impromptu match where the card originally only had 4 matches. And we had Matt Riddle kicking things off, coming down and accepting Cassius Ohno's challenge. And let's not wait till Wednesday. Well, technically, it would have been early in the day for the pre-recorded matches. But Riddle challenges Ohno or accept Ohno's challenge. Out comes Cassius Ohno. So what happens next is pretty much the bell rings, and then the bell rings. Cassius Ohno at the opening bell tries to charge at Matt Riddle, and Riddle meets him halfway with a high knee to the jaw and the chin area, and knocking out Cassius Ohno. Immediately goes for the cover. Referee counts 3, and the bell rings in a 7-second match. Some argue it was 6, but I guess depending when your stopwatch begins. But great match to a great blink of an eye match. If you miss it, and just to get the crowd riled up, and they were really behind Matt Riddle. I mentioned this before. I don't know too much of Matt Riddle, but from what I've seen so far on NXT TV, he's a great athlete and really young. I think still in his 20s, I believe. So if he continues to play his cards right for the next couple of years, assuming his run in NXT before he moves up, he'll do just fine. He'll do real fine, and the crowd was already amped up as it is because it's a War Games event, and we immediately jump into the 2 out of 3 falls match, NXT Women's Championship, as Shayna Baszler defends against Kairi Sane. I couldn't help but to think back at the conference call for NXT the week before, and Triple H was answering a question to one of the fans. Well, one, having only 4 matches on one event, and 2, pointing out Triple H did that it's one of the reasons that the women's title match was 2 out of 3 falls, so they will be given that extra time to have a much competitive match. I might have tweaked or paraphrased a little bit what Triple H ended up saying, but the match altogether was just under 11 minutes. So what extra time? Where did that extra time go? I guess probably into the main event, considering how long that match was. But as it turns out, both women gave it their all. Kairi Sane really shined here, standing up to Shayna Baszler's defense and her MMA background skills. Even though there was some outside interference for Shayna Baszler to win the first fall as her buddies came down, the other 2 members of the 4 Horsewomen. And I think things were even up with Dakota Kai and Io Shirai for the second fall. But at the end, Kairi Sane was going for her insane elbow, only for Baszler to counter it. And it looked like Sane made contact, but Shayna barely just, moved to the side and hooked the arm of the elbow on Kairi and just rolled her over for the pinfall. And Shayna Baszler retains her NXT Women's title. And we're pretty much going to get a 6-women tag team match at some point, if not maybe for the NXT the NXT Take Over for the Royal Rumble weekend. And makes sense. I mean, they could have one-off matches between now and Royal Rumble weekend on NXT TV. Don't know exactly how ready Duke and Schaefer are. The other 2 members of the 4 Horsewomen of MMA. Triple H did also point out at the press conference that they're both at the Performance Center and eventually will be part of the NXT roster. So 3/4 of the MMA 4 Horsewomen are in NXT. Of course, the other quarter is Ronda Rousey on Raw, which we'll talk about in a bit. So I want to believe that seeds are being planted to eventually reunite the 4 Horsewomen of the MMA in the WWE main roster at some point, maybe towards or around WrestleMania time, but even then that might be too soon considering that Duke and Schaefer are still pretty green. But that's just me. In a very physical, and I mean physical, beating the crap out of each other match, Aleister Black would defeat Johnny Gargano on a one-on-one match, just under 20 minutes at 18:10. And talk about payback. But Gargano spent the beginning of the match here taunting and trying to bait Aleister Black into making mistakes, and he did a couple of times, only to Black to realize that he needed to calm down and basically compose himself. And it showed as Aleister Black just unloaded with a barrage of kicks and chops and just basically bringing down Gargano's defense. And at the end, it took 2 Black Mass spinning back kicks to the head, as after the first one, Aleister held up Gargano with his foot. And then did another Black Mass to end it and get the 3 count for the win. Tommaso Ciampa defeated and retained his NXT Championship versus the Velveteen Dream, who channeled his inner Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Hogan, by the way, will later on praise the Dream on Twitter by keeping the dream alive. Much love, HH. Match went over just over 22 minutes as Tommaso Ciampa retained. Many felt that Velveteen Dream was, this was his moment. There were at least a couple of times that it looked that way, but I knew going in that Ciampa, who just recently won the title not too long ago, might have been too soon. Not that the Velveteen Dream does not deserve it, or at least another run or another shot at it, I should say. Not a run. He hasn't won it yet. But it's just a matter of time. Things are being scuffled around, and sooner or later, I do believe the Velveteen Dream will be NXT champion before he gets called up. Curious to see how Vince and his creative team are going to handle him. Hopefully, he'll have a good run on Smackdown, because Smackdown right now has the better roster, and Velveteen Dream has the potential of having great matches with many members of that brand. And then it was time for the War Games. 2 rings surrounded by a steel cage, no rooftop. So I was curious about that. Maybe that the last year match would be a one-off with no roof. But I guess they figured, well, considering the participants that they've included so far, including the Undisputed Era 2 years in a row now, you might want to take off that roof and have them jump off of it, because half of these guys, if not most of them, have a habit of performing high-risk maneuvers. And what makes it higher and riskier? Well, climb the cage and jump off the top of that. So it was Pete Dunne, Ricochet, and the War Raiders of Hanson and Ray Rowe defeating the Undisputed Era of Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong. This match nearly went 50 minutes at 47-10. If you haven't seen this match, my words cannot do it justice. I mean, there was just so much going on. There was a story being told here that Pete Dunne's knee was injured from a previous NXT taping. Although the real story might be, and this wasn't confirmed, at least because WWE hasn't released a report yet, but it's believed that Pete Dunne has a legit foot injury, but is still working through it. And they made it seem like it was his knee on TV rather than his foot. So hence, if he was limping too much or too obvious, that, well, he's injured. So storyline or kayfabe, he had his knee injury a couple of weeks ago, and now he's here performing at the War Games. And another reason why, if you haven't noticed, when it came time for the Pete Dunne, Ricochet, War Raiders team to start releasing their participants one at a time, when the buzzer went off, both War Raiders kept Pete Dunne at bay, not wanting him to join just yet. They were saving him for last, and sure enough, he was. And I believe it was O'Reilly. When he came out last for his team, he went over to padlock the chain that's holding Pete Dunne's cage closed with his padlock, meaning so it was double padlocked. The referee on Pete Dunne's cage, when it was time for him to be released, unlocks the key that he had to that lock, but just threw his hands up and say, well, I don't have the key for this lock. So why even bother unlocking your lock, knowing that there's a second lock? They ended up getting a bolt cutter a few minutes later, and Pete Dunne joined the match, and he was already limping down the rampway, so adding more speculation of how seriously hurt Pete Dunne is. But at the end, again, the faces won here. The NXT UK champion, Pete Dunne, Ricochet, the North American champion, and the War Raiders probably get a tag team title shot real soon. And voila, because the Undisputed Era, with their tag team champions there, they don't celebrate. They don't defend the titles too often, but when they do, they always bring the air game and then some. And when it comes time for the War Raiders and the Undisputed Era for the tag titles, it's going to be a Donnybrook. I don't know why I'm speaking that way, but many announcers throughout the years would say that, keeping it PG, I guess. So that was NXT TakeOver War Games. Again, an A+ show. Survivor Series would have a lot to follow, if you will. And I would say this for Survivor Series, they tried. They really tried. It wasn't exactly an A+ show at the end of it. Very close. Maybe I'll give it a B grade. I'm still working on a rating system or a grade system here, so bear with me on that. But I thought the Survivor Series show overall was pretty good, and keeping up to speed with NXT shows the day after. as they always do when it comes to these big show events on these long weekends. They at least try. So during the kickoff match, it was the whole 10-on-10, 5 tag teams against 5 tag teams, Raw versus SmackDown elimination match. As team captains of SmackDown, Jay and Jimmy Uso led the team of the New Day of Big E and Xavier Woods, along with Sanity of Eric Young and Killian Dane, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and the Colognes of Epico and Primo. And the match against Raw team, captained by Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, with the revival of Dash Wilder and Scott Dawson, B team of Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, the Lucha House Party of Lindsay Dorado and Kalisto, and at some point mixed in with Grand Metalik, and the Ascension of Khan and Victor. At least for the first quarter of the match, maybe, no, let me rephrase, the first 3 quarters of the match was pretty dull. They had a couple of fast-paced eliminations, basically getting rid of the tag teams that they honestly didn't really want in there, such as the Ascension, such as the B team, Sanity, the Colognes. They all were eliminated pretty quickly. And then it came down to 2 teams of the Usos taking on the Revival, which really sparked a lot of interest there. A potential dream match, at least a modern day dream match, because the Revivals has definitely proved themselves over the past few years. The Usos that have been around for, they've been down since day one-ish, and definitely have already left their mark in the business. And the little time that they had here, an amazing match. But at the end, it took the Usos, Jimmy and Jay, to be victorious over the Revival, thus putting SmackDown on the scoreboard. But they did and didn't at the same time, but we'll get to that. The opening match for the actual pay-per-view at Survivor Series was Team Raw of the women's side. Team captain Alexa Bliss, who sat this out and stood ringside, led the team of Mickie James, Bayley, Sasha Banks, Tamina, and the Monster Heat magnet of Nia Jax. The moment her theme song started playing, the moment she stepped out into the arena, monster heat, and she's taking in every bit of it, pointing out the very same fist that she punched out and concussed Becky Lynch with. And you know what? They're going with it, WWE, and there was really no other way to deal with it or handle it. A lot of people are not too fond of Nia Jax right now because she unintentionally, I still believe, took away the biggest match that we were all looking forward to on the women's division, of that being Becky Lynch taking on Ronda Rousey. But it didn't happen yet, so we're hoping by the time Becky Lynch does recover, she will return and eventually have that match against Ronda Rousey. Maybe WrestleMania now, since everything was shuffled around. We're hoping to definitely get some kind of interaction either at TLC or at the Royal Rumble coming up in January. But there's still hope there. But at the end here, Nia Jax was victorious with Team Raw as the sole survivor against Team SmackDown, captained by now Naomi, Carmella, Sonya Deville, Asuka, and replacing Charlotte Flair was Mandy Rose. So much for the surprise Nikki Cross debut or cameo here, but didn't happen. And it wasn't like it was last minute. Everything else was switched around between Raw and SmackDown last week, virtually at the last minute. So really no excuse there. Don't know what they were thinking. They could have still saved her by not having a pin, as a count out or DQ, because, well, it's Nikki Cross. So she can't get away with certain things like that if they wanted to save her face. Or save face, I should say. That came out wrong. I apologize. Seth Rollins will come out as the Intercontinental Champion, going one-on-one with United States Champion Shinsuke Nakamura. And I got to say, this was definitely a better match than I thought. I knew it was going to be good, but it definitely exceeded my expectations. There was a lot of back and forth here. But at the end, Seth Rollins would defeat Shinsuke Nakamura with a curve stomp. And both men showed their respect at the end of the match. Even though Rollins was still in the ring and Shinsuke was already up the rampway. but he stopped and turned around to acknowledge Rollins, and Rollins gave the acknowledgement back. Thus, we have respect here between both men for the first time ever in WWE, and possibly first time ever, period, ever since Shinsuke came over from New Japan, and Seth Rollins eventually moved up from FCW and then through NXT and then WWE. So, yeah, definitely the first time these two men ever met in the ring. It kind of showed a little bit, but the chemistry was there, and just imagine if they were given even extra time. This match only went just over 21 minutes, and they did a great job. Next up were the Raw Tag Team Champions of AOP, Akam and Razor, taking on the SmackDown Tag Team Champions of The Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro, Big Show in their corner, and Drake Maverick in the corner of AOP. Well, unfortunately, this wasn't that good of a match. You had two teams with two equally sized and strong duos, and I personally felt that the chemistry just wasn't there. There were a couple of dull spots, and I don't know. They probably didn't know exactly what to do with this match, they being creative, and it showed not only here, but later on in the week or the next night on Raw and SmackDown, respectively. But AOP got the win, pinning Sheamus in the process with that double neckbreaker powerbomb combo that they do. And the highlight in this 9-minute match was Drake Maverick peed himself after he ran into Big Show, and Big Show catches him in a chokehold and puts him up on the apron. And while he's holding him there, Big Show is, slowly but surely you'll see a little trickle of something fluid coming from Maverick's trousers or khaki pants, whatever you want to call it. And again, that was the highlight of the whole match. So now they're being referred to as AOPP, which is quite embarrassing within itself. But I wonder who came up with that idea and approved it, because by golly, we haven't seen that in a long time, those pee and fart jokes. So there it is. Moving on. For the first time, I think, in quite some time, the Cruiserweight Championship was finally defended on the main card of a pay-per-view as Buddy Murphy took on Mustafa Ali. And it's interesting here that they had a slow start, and the crowd in Los Angeles, I guess, wasn't having it. They started chanting boring. And I don't know if they being the two wrestlers realized this, or they were reaching this point of the match anyway, because the pace definitely picked up in the second half of the match. A lot of high flying. There was a Spanish fly done off the announcer's table onto the arena floor. That was crazy. But at the end, Buddy Murphy would retain and defeat Mustafa Ali, and he's still the Cruiserweight champion. And these guys need more time. They deserve more time, rather, when it comes to pay-per-views. Just give them the time. They were given just under 15 minutes at 12:20 here. So it can be done. Surprisingly, I'll give him this much. When it came to the lineup of the matches, the Cruiserweight title was not the first match of the card. So I'll give them that. This is like really, literally in the middle of the pay-per-view, and they delivered. The Cruiserweights did. So hopefully this is an omen of things to come for the Cruiserweight division and 205 Live. Then it was time for the men's 5-on-5 Raw vs. SmackDown Elimination Tag Team match as Team Braun, captained by Baron Corbin, who was on the outside. Doof, wow. It's definitely been a while for me, folks. But Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, and Bobby Lashley of Team Raw took on Team SmackDown of The Miz, Shane McMahon, Rey Mysterio, Samoa Joe, and Jeff Hardy. Of course, Miz was team captain here. Originally was supposed to be co-captain with Daniel Bryan, but changes made, and Bryan was taken out even before he won the title. But it happens, I guess. I thought the match itself was pretty good, with one exception, and I know I'm not alone in this. how quickly Samoa Joe was eliminated. And he's another one that might be working with an injury, specifically his knee or foot, right after Super Showdown. And hence why he hasn't been seen on television as much, as he's still recovering. He was brought back into the fold for that other show from Parts Unknown, and basically filled in a spot here for Survivor Series, and he was immediately taken out by Drew McIntyre, and the crowd was just losing their minds, and it really showed, because the next elimination wouldn't happen for a long time in this 24-minute match. But I get it. If that's the case, then I get it. I understand. He's injured, can't do much, and also you just can't have him standing there all night long and not do anything. So it is what it is, I guess. But the story here is that Raw was being overwhelmed at first, as Finn Balor and eventually Bobby Lashley were taken out. No, I'm sorry, Finn Balor and Dolph Ziggler were taken out for Team Raw, and it was a 4-on-3 advantage for SmackDown. So Shane McMahon began to be creative after eliminating Dolph Ziggler with a coast-to-coast drop kick. Miz thought it would be cool to see that again against, I believe it was Drew McIntyre. No, I'm sorry, against Bobby Lashley. And at this point, Shane is spent. He is gassed. And it's like, okay, I'll go do that again. Like just less than a minute before he did the previous one. So Strowman comes out of nowhere and clotheslines Shane McMahon in midair after Strowman was thrown through the table earlier on, keeping him out of the match for quite some time. And then once Strowman got tagged in, he just cleaned house, eliminating the remaining members of Team SmackDown, of Hardy, Mysterio, The Miz, and eventually Shane McMahon. It was just a slaughter of Team SmackDown, and Raw prevailed as Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, and Braun Strowman were the survivors, only to be attacked by Baron Corbin at the very end of the match. And the heels would go up the rampway in celebration, leaving Strowman behind, licking his wounds. In the match that should have been the main event, and this is now back-to-back pay-per-views, that the women would have a tremendous match. The last one being the last women standing match at Evolution with Charlotte and Becky. This time it was a match with Charlotte replacing Becky Lynch due to injury, as the SmackDown Women's Champion had to step aside with a concussion, a broken face as they describe it, and eventually had to not take part in this eventual champion versus champion match against Ronda Rousey, who was the Raw Women's Champion. But what a story told here. The crowd was still as amped up as I'm sure there would have been with Becky Lynch. And great match, great chemistry, great timing by both women. It didn't seem like Ronda, who many are still concerned about her, her timing. She's just under a year in the business, and it's like they're waiting for her to screw up so badly, so that way they have an excuse just to chew her out. And I think that's unfair. Ronda's has been performing very well ever since WrestleMania. She does sell. Some say she sells too much or oversells, but at least she's selling, unlike some people. But it works, and she does have chemistry with everyone that she's been in the ring with, whether it's been a short match, long match, but in this case, there was a story being told here, and there's a lot more to it as time goes on. So, Charlotte Flair seemed that realizing that couldn't make heads or tails of Ronda's defense, as she's being tossed around, and after an attempted armbar, Charlotte would roll out of the ring. Referee begins to count. Ronda didn't want to have any of that, so she jumps out of the ring on the opposite end to run around the corner, and only to be met with a swinging kendo stick by Charlotte, causing the DQ, as Ronda would win the match at that point. But it wasn't over. Charlotte would throw back Ronda back into the ring, pick up a chair, and I'm getting ahead of myself. With the same kendo stick, Charlotte just beat the crap out of Ronda on the outside, breaking the candlestick over her body. She's hitting her knees, her legs, her thighs, her arms, shoulders, the back. So what does Charlotte do? Picks up another candlestick and breaks that one as Ronda tried to get back into the ring. And it was at this point, I guess Charlotte needed something better and bigger than a candlestick. So she gets a steel chair, folds it up, and starts beating Ronda with that. Wraps it around her head and neck, and would pulmonize, as the cliche goes. Not the ankle, but pulmonize her neck, Ronda Rousey's neck. And just, Ronda took it like a champ and coughed up like, she had a hairball. And this whole time, the crowd is going absolutely nuts. They were behind Charlotte Flair for this beating, maybe visualizing it was Becky Lynch instead, but maybe this was going to be the story after all, had Becky not been injured, and just have Ronda be the one suffering at the end, whether she won the match or not. And eventually, Charlotte Flair would stop the attack, but only when referees and other officials would come down. She would beat up on them and continue to attack Ronda, but eventually would leave on her own accord. Basically, Charlotte's snapping here, so it's kind of doing a split personality or a schizo kind of character here, which is yet to be determined at this point. But Ronda was left battered and bruised and beaten down, coughing up, wasn't coughing up blood, but just selling the fact that her neck was crushed with a steel chair around it. And as she's leaving, the crowd was booing, the crowd was chanting, "You deserved it." And I'm sitting at home watching, what exactly did Ronda do? I mean, storyline-wise, Becky attacked her backstage, and granted, at that point, Becky had already been an established character as far as her, her BMF persona, a la Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Becky couldn't do anything wrong, really, in the eyes of the fans. But besides the back and forth promo trash talking, what did Ronda really do that was so wrong? But it's safe to say that the crowd in Los Angeles were bloodthirsty, and they got some of that. And Ronda paid for the penance, and she was booed out of the building. Even stopped and turned to acknowledge them and looked around as, what is wrong with you people? Kind of look on her face. But what a trooper, Ronda Rousey. And she would, I'll get to my Raw review later and point out what happened with Ronda there. Then it was main event time. Under 20 minutes, as Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar took on the new WWE Champion, Daniel Bryan. Yeah, same old stuff for the first half of the match. Bryan was taunting and teasing and baiting Lesnar in. Eventually, Lesnar will catch him and just suplex city him all over the place for a while. Fans were getting a little agitated, chanting bullshit, same old shit, all that stuff. It was boring. He even F5'd Bryan at one point, but went for the pin, but lifted his head and shoulders up and just wanted to continue to beat up on Bryan even more. And at that point, it was barely under a 10-minute match. And Lesnar, I think it was a German suplex, a released German suplex, and leaves Bryan flat on his back in the middle of the ring. Lesnar just walks around, speaks to Heyman, comes back trying to pick up Bryan, and this is what Bryan was trying to make his comeback, giving off a few kicks to the head from the ground. And somehow this got the audience ramped up again as Bryan was trying to pursue a comeback with kicks and chops and headbutts and elbows, everything and anything to bring down Brock Lesnar. Even went for the running knee a couple of times. But at the end, unfortunately, Lesnar would catch Bryan yet again, hit him with the F5, get the 3 count, and Lesnar, the Universal Champion, would defeat the WWE Champion back-to-back years at Survivor Series, only this time it was Daniel Bryan, and gave, according to the commentators, gave Raw a clean sweep of SmackDown at Survivor Series, completely ignoring the fact that Team SmackDown won on the kickoff show, but it never counted. It doesn't count. If that's the case, then why did you book it that way? I mean, So that was Survivor Series 2018. Again, I give it a B plus if I'm really push the envelope. I say that because it was the beginning of a lot of new storylines here. Still questionable booking on the Raw side when it comes to Strowman and Corbin, even though they did shine a little light on the manner the following night on Raw, which I'll get into here in a sec. But that's the whole point, isn't it? When you do a pay-per-view, you end it a certain way that either leaves the audience happy and still want to come back for more to see where it goes, or leave them confused or head scratching, only to have them come back and see what happens. Oh my goodness! But we get into Raw, and it opens up with Baron Corbin coming down and asks for Stephanie to join him. She then mentions that the Raw vs. SmackDown 10-on-10 tag team match did not count, and it was indeed a clean sweep, 6-0 Raw over SmackDown. Well, there you go, because she said so. Corbin then asked to make himself a more permanent GM on Raw, but here comes Braun Strowman pointing out that Survivor Series was over, and he wants to get these hands on Corbin. But Stephanie says that match will be at TLC instead, in a TLC match. And if Corbin wins, he'll get his wish and become a permanent general manager of Raw. Otherwise, he'll be out of power. But if Strowman wins, he will get his deserved Universal Championship match at the Royal Rumble. And as of right now, it stands as Brock Lesnar going into Rumble as the champion, because what? So the match was set for TLC, but Corbin would then try to set up a match right there on the spot. Handicap match, that is, between Strowman taking on Lashley and Drew McIntyre. But Stephanie changes that into a 3-on-3 elimination match instead, as Corbin would join Lashley and Drew McIntyre, and Strowman would be joined by Finn Balor and Elias. Didn't really matter anyway, because Strowman ended up in a handicap match as it was, as Finn Balor and Elias would get eliminated pretty quickly. And it came down to a 3-on-1 match, as Strowman was outnumbered and the heels beat the crap out of him with chairs, candlesticks, and stairs, busting his elbow wide open, causing a DQ for the win for Braun Strowman. And the beatdown took for so long. The matches, the opening segment, the promo, and the match itself was so long that all of this was in the first hour of a 3-hour Monday Night Raw show. Yeah, 50, 55 minutes, whatever. But it was the first hour initially, because there wouldn't be a match right after all of this nonsense took place. But a good hour, a majority of an hour was taken up for all of this stuff to be told. And I'll have an update on Braun Strowman here in a minute. Then we would have Seth Rollins come out to cut a promo and is looking for Dean Ambrose again, as Dean appears on the Titantron and tries to get monster heat. Ambrose did by saying what happened to Roman Reigns was karma for what the Shield did years ago. And this is what I was afraid of. I mean, they got to this point now where about a month removed from Roman Reigns' emotional and serious promo acknowledging that his leukemia unfortunately returned, and he has to step down for a while, and even surrendering the Universal title. My thing was at the time, okay, he'll deal with this. He and his family will get through this, and we'll see Roman again. But I guess creative and Vince just couldn't help themselves and include this as part of a storyline. Why? Because they don't think Ambrose has enough heat on him. Like the guy hasn't been seen on television as much, and when he is, he's like literally in and out, hasn't had a match, and they're wondering why he hasn't had much heat on him. Lesnar can do that because he's holding the title hostage again, so he automatically has that monster heel heat because he never shows up to defend that damn thing. You got Ambrose. Best I can tell, he's not injured. He's not sick or anything, but he's available every Monday night, and only shows up with his little jacket or starts deciding to burn his old attire in the parking lot was standing in the audience, basically keeping away all the hot dog vendors. So why exactly did you have to go there to include Roman Reigns in this when it has nothing to do with the breakup at all? Not to mention, by you mentioning this, now it's part of the timeline. The timeline of this feud, this angle. God forbid something happens to Roman Reigns. How are you going to talk yourself out of that one? Just saying, when the shit's real, leave it alone. Should not be part of the storyline. And that's when you talk about blurring the lines between reality and entertainment. Well, this entertainment is based on something that's real. And there's no one else but to blame, whether you deny it or accept the backlash after the fact. Well, they've done before and just brushed it off like dirt off their shoulders. And it really sucks. But so the rest of the night, Seth Rollins will be looking for Dean Ambrose, but always seems to be just miss him, as you see Dean in the background and every other segment moving forward for the rest of the show. Bayley and Sasha Banks will team up in a tag team match to take on Nia Jax and Tamina. And once again, Nia Jax with her monster heat, as they were returning into the Staples Center for this episode of Raw. And Bayley gets crushed by Nia Jax to get the victory for her team. Not really advancing anything, as once again Sasha Banks and Bayley have been thrown to the wolves here, as they're now building up and taking advantage of the heat that Nia Jax has been created really out of nowhere, out of thin air, because of her accidental punch to Becky Lynch's face the week prior. But see, this is something, like, oh, well, JM, you're kind of, stepping on your own words there. But no, this is different. Becky Lynch will recover. Becky Lynch will heal. Bones heal, concussions go away, even though she can be prone for other ones in the future. But Becky Lynch can't lose her life from a broken nose or a broken face or a black eye or a concussion. But, I guess depending how serious it was. But Becky Lynch guaranteed is returning. And yeah, they threw that in there as part of the storyline because that happened in the ring. That happened on their watch. What happened with Roman Reigns was not under the WWE umbrella. I guess you could say because Roman is an employee or independent contractor or whatever for WWE. Okay, but his illness didn't come from WWE. He had it before he even joined the company, and unfortunately resurfaced, and he has to deal with it again. And by doing so, he has to step away. To me, that sounds more of a serious illness, of a more medical issue than a broken face that can heal eventually, much quicker than leukemia. So I don't want to hear no nonsense about it's okay for them to use it with Nia and Becky, but it's not okay for Roman and Dean Ambrose. Exactly. One has nothing to do with the other, and they're two separate situations, two separate incidences. And again, because we know exactly what happened. We don't know exactly what Roman Reigns is going through, whether he's getting chemo or anything like that. And I seriously doubt they're going to ever post that on social media somewhere. So let's just be a little bit more realistic about this and what can and cannot be included that's based on reality, and you want to turn into the storyline just to spice things up, or because you can't get your character to get as much monster heat as you want them to, you have to sink to that level. But that's just me. That is just me. Even after having an epic showdown with the Usos the night before, the Revival would now then lose to the Lucha House Party under Lucha House Party rules, making the match 3-on-2 in favor of the Faces, which doesn't make any sense. Once again, the Revival being crushed on the main roster. And then it was Ronda Rousey to come out to cut a promo as she showed off the battle scars from Survivor Series, bruises up and down her thigh area. She eventually took off her jacket and was trying to show off bruises on her back, shoulders, and arm, and definitely on her ear. Her ear was cut open after a candlestick shot. Many people either didn't realize or forgotten that Ronda has a bit of a cauliflower ear, and that burst during the attack from Charlotte on Survivor Series. It wasn't bleeding buckets or anything, but it did bust her open there on her ear, and that's going to be marked for sure this whole week. It was really red and swollen, and even across her, the lower portion of her temple was really bruised up on the same side. I believe it's her right side of the face. But Ronda was out here cutting a promo that, she's still a fighting champion and she's willing to prove it. And she challenged anyone from the women's roster from Raw to come out and take her on. Corbin would try to come out and say, like, no, you're not ready. You don't need to compete with anyone. I'm not allowing you. And Ronda pretty much stared down Corbin and threatened to destroy him if he didn't oblige to her wishes. So he steps aside, and out comes Mickie James, who just gets her ass handed to her and gets destroyed in the middle of the ring. And this led many to believe, like, okay, here we have Ronda Rousey destroying Mickie James the night after she gets destroyed herself at Survivor Series and not selling any of her injuries. Basically making Flair look bad here in the process. Well, sure, granted, a beating like that, you can't really recover from one day to another, even much less competing at all the very next night. But the story here, at least the way I see it, and hopefully others have as well, is that Ronda's living up to this, baddest or toughest woman on the planet persona. So you can beat her down, but rest assured she'll be right back. Wasn't exactly the same story being told after her first loss at UFC and all the emotional drama she went through with that and dealing with that. And then her first match back, loses again and called it quits. So if you're incorporating that part of her life, that part of her career into not selling this past Monday night from Raw, getting the beatdown from Survivor Series, then I understand and I get your point of view. But here it's on the WWE, and she's being portrayed as the baddest woman on the planet. Or in Becky Lynch's case, she's the baddest bitch on the planet. But yeah, I do get the argument there. Maybe she could have, Ronda that is, could have still beaten down Mickie the way she did. But in the process, my arm still hurts a little bit. So, after that attempted judo throw, or maybe later on in the match, delivering the judo throw, it still favors the arm injury and could barely get her armbar submission in the process. So, yeah, I get that. I completely agree with that. But, it's done now. So moving forward, I don't know if they're going to try to clean that up a little bit in the storytelling, maybe somehow. But we shall see. But poor Mickie James, unfortunately, feeling the wrath here from Ronda Rousey. And moving forward, as Drake Maverick was seen backstage and being made fun of by everybody around catering, and eventually running into Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, who was still laughing at the unfortunate incident that Maverick went through at Survivor Series the night before, as Big Show made him pee his pants. So Maverick was looking for revenge and payback, as he was going to sick his boys of the AOP against Gable and Roode in a non-title match. And they defeat the Raw Tag Team Champions. My thing is, why not over a DQ? The emotions get the best of the Tag Team Champions and Drake, and they kind of snapped themselves a little bit. Couldn't take the fact that they're being made Drake more than the AOP, because AOP had nothing to do with that, peeing the pants, and basically give AOP an order from Maverick and just destroy them, whatever. We'll get the EQ, but we'll still the title. We'll still be the champions. Yeah, horrible booking here, making you tag team champions. These big, tough, rough guys in Akam and Rezar really look weak. I mean, seriously, those two were just making fun of your manager basically being, pissing himself. and it took Gable to roll up, I think it was Akam, for the win. And by the way, this leads into a Raw Tag Team title match as AOP will defend against Bobby Roode and Chad Gable this coming Monday. Yay? I don't know. Maybe the DQ will come from here. Natalya will take on Ruby Riott. I failed to mention earlier during my Survivor Series review during the kickoff. Big surprise, Natalya and Ruby Riott could not get along, and they ended up in a scuffle. And they were replaced on Team Smackdown. Oh, geez, I'm so all over the place today. Because of the scuffle between Natalya and Ruby Riott, they were replaced on Team Raw by Bayley and Sasha Banks. So that's what I meant to say earlier, and stand corrected. But here we had Natalya defeating Ruby Riott with a roll-up and getting the payback and avenge the broken sunglasses of her dad, Jim Neidhart. And that was it. No Riott Squad beatdown this time around because Natalya has a backup still in the locker room, not budging. I don't know. Logic, common sense, again, does not exist here. And in the final segment of Raw, Dean Ambrose comes down to cut a promo to the fans saying that they would have done the same thing that he did, as he felt betrayed and backstabbed and held back by the other Shield members. But here comes Seth Rollins, who failed to find Ambrose backstage and was about to leave the arena. But he comes running down here and gets into a scuffle with Dean Ambrose. The two-man brawl for a little while. After being broken up by the referees, Ambrose will deliver a low blow and deliver a dirty deeds and leave Seth Rollins laying, only for Ambrose to return back into the ring and deliver another dirty deeds, and they fade to black. I thought it was a weak ending, very similar to the week before, only this time at least they got physical. But okay, I understand there's a whole month away from TLC and have a lot of time to fill in. And there's a good chance of Rollins getting his payback this coming week on Monday. And they're kind of going to go back and forth until then, as it will be for the Intercontinental Championship. At this point, there's no stipulation. You would think there would be one, especially at a pay-per-view called TLC. But they're going for a straight-up wrestling match here. And no stip for now. Honestly, I thought they'll change it, but figure making sense. It's for the title, if that's not personal enough. What's going on, or what happened, I should say, with Roman Reigns, because that's already part of the storyline. But more so that if you're a Seth Rollins fan, like, well, the title is just as important. So Rollins might lose his cool or let his emotion get the best of him. So maybe throw in a no DQ stipulation, or you must win by pinfall only kind of thing. Of course, that throws out the no DQ law, but still, just make it interesting. Jeez. Saying. Over at SmackDown, we have Charlotte Flair opening up and comes out to cut a promo and is proud of what she did to Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series. And, of course, the fans are getting behind this. They're eating all this, every moment of Charlotte Flair, all of her words, and big smile on her face, showing off her pearly whites. Then we have Paige come down and basically fines Charlotte Flair $100,000 for the treatment and abuse that she dished out. Charlotte Flair did on referees and officials at Survivor Series. And she's a Flair, so it's not like she can't afford it, so she'll be all right. Then the Iconics will come down, basically making fun of Charlotte Flair being fined and having to be in the ring with Ronda Rousey, only for Flair to turn it around and challenge both Iconics in a separate one-on-one matches, first defeating Billie Kay, and then Peyton Royce will get disqualified in her match, beating down Flair, as Billie Kay will join the fray and it'll be a 2-on-1 beatdown, and eventually leaving Charlotte Flair high and dry, only for Flair to make a comeback and beat down the Iconics and leaving them laying all over the place after a double spear and a few shots towards the announce table. And Flair walks away once again, showing her dominance in a 2-on-1 situation this time around, and be interesting to see where this goes. And by the way, is Flair a heel now? People saying that she is, but she's pretty much doing very similar gestures and behaviors that Becky Lynch has been doing. So kind of difficult to decide that. And Lynch was supposed to be heel, but she's a face in the audience. Flair was a face before all this happened, doing heelish things, but still being praised as a face. So go figure. Someone explain that to me. Miz TV was up next, as his guest was Shane McMahon. And Miz suggested that they should team up because Miz wants to be next to the best in the world, even though this was more of a sucking up attempt by Miz. So he invites Shane McMahon to join him in a tag team match. And as the Miz brings down Wayne and Dane Bryant, who I will later find out it was really Eli Everfly and Kata Murray. But the Miz, I guess, underestimated his opponents, as even though he was beating down on Everfly, I believe it was, and then Everfly gets up, he gets picked up, and surprised the Miz with a roll up and gets the 3 count. So as the indies or the indie wrestlers or the jobbers, if you will, pick up a victory over a former WWE champion. I dare say, is Miz a Grand Slam champion? Is he? I think he is. Yeah, United States Intercontinental Tag Team. Yeah, so yeah, Miz is a Grand Slam champion and the commissioner of SmackDown. And all Shane could really do, who was never tagged in a match, by the way, and never took off his jacket, looking at Miz as to say, okay, what now? We'll see where this goes. Again, there's a lot of time to fill in between now and TLC, and what will be decided between Miz and Shane going into that pay-per-view. Then it was time for the Thanksgiving feast match as The Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro and Big Show took on The New Day, Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods, reportedly on the Dare, was wearing that T-shirt that said 6-1. And I guess it was approved. I don't know too much when it comes to specific ring attire and if it has any meaning behind it, such as a 6-1 T-shirt that Xavier wore. But he was out there, even wearing it during a backstage skit with the rest of the New Day. And the Gobbledygooker made his cameo return, only to be prized this time of R-Truth. And I thought it was a very hilarious and entertainment moment there. But the match itself ended when you had both Big Show on one side of the ring and Cesaro on the other, going through dinner tables filled with food, and Sheamus would get knocked out via a food bombardment, taking the loss for the team as the New Day were victorious. It was very entertaining. It was very, very hilarious. I mean, as always with the New Day, and I just wish it didn't come at the expense at the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, for crying out loud. So we have both Tag Team Champions not looking their best this week, but considering it's the beginning of the holiday season and maybe giving an excuse, I don't know. I really don't know, but I thought they could have done much better with AOP and a little better with The Bar on SmackDown. We had a women's tag team match of Asuka and Naomi taking on Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. Still showing teases and dissension between Deville and Rose of a potential breakup here, even though Deville basically took a bullet for the team as Asuka came in for an attack, but Deville intercepted by pushing Mandy Rose out of the way, and it was Deville taking the full brunt of it. And eventually Asuka applied her Asuka lock on Deville and tapped out for the win. So breakup. And if we are getting the women's tag team championships anytime soon, why are we breaking up teams now? Anyone? Don't all raise your hand at once, please, because someone explain that to me. Then we had Daniel Bryan the WWE champion come down and talk about saying that the Yes Movement is dead, as he appears to be more bitter, more angry at the world kind of approach and attitude, mentioning that Brock Lesnar, he beat the fear out of him during the match. And if this didn't really certify him as the new heel now, as a new heel champion, I don't know what else. Well, I mean, he got me with saying the Yes Movement is dead. So it'll be quite some time, and maybe a change in theme music would help. But yeah, Bryan is a full-fledged heel now, defeating AJ Styles, who was not on the show at all, by the way. And we may or may not get a rematch between the two at TLC, I'm thinking, or at least hold off to Royal Rumble. And also, someone else that was not on the show was Samoa Joe. I believe it was at a house party of sorts, as he posted on Instagram. Couldn't really pick up on the dialogue, but Samoa Joe looked like he was healthy enough, especially if he's attending a house party somewhere in California. But yeah, Joe was not on SmackDown this week either. I don't know what I just said. Ignore that. Point being that it's official, Daniel Bryan is a heel, and he's a heel WWE champion. In the main event, we saw Rey Mysterio taking on Randy Orton, as Orton was focusing on getting the mask off of Rey. And after a brutal chair shot, a chair attack actually on the outside of the ring, leaving Rey Mysterio beaten down and eventually maskless. I don't think that's a word, but Mysterio was left without his mask. And even during the match, Orton was tearing away at the eye hole of the mask. I said eye hole. And clearly exposed Mysterio's face more than once. And the camera really didn't try to break away or anything. It was held there for a few moments. And it's not like we didn't ever see Rey Mysterio without his mask, but at least not in recent time. But I guess Orton's collecting trophies now. Mysterio is considered a legend, so maybe Orton is reprising his legendary killer persona. Who knows? But he was just gun-ho on taking off that mask, ripping it off, and he did. He tore it right off, and Mysterio immediately covered up his face with his palms after the chair shot and the RKO on the outside of the ring, and referees came down to break it up, and they went off the air with that. So we have a new angle or feud here with Mysterio and Orton. And in case you're wondering why I didn't mention it or ignored it, I just thought it was stupid. It was dumb. What he was thinking, and just, as Liv Morgan put it, just move on. Move on to the next. The whole situation with Enzo Amore at Survivor Series, there were some rumblings earlier online during Survivor Series, and at least from my point of view, I couldn't see it. And of course, not that the camera people were focusing on that side of the arena, but after a particular photo was floating around and fans were pointing out, yeah, that looks like him. Why is he there? And of course, during the Raw Tag Team Champions versus the SmackDown Tag Team Champions match, he made it clear who he was and just decided to hijack the show, or at least try to. And a portion of it was caught on camera in the background, and he was eventually taken down by Lisa, everyone's new favorite and hero security officer at the arena, and was escorted out of the building and eventually banned from the Staples Center. So good job there, guy. Hopefully your hip-hop career picks up enough where you can't even perform in that arena anymore, or at all, if ever for the first time. So don't quit your day job, whatever that is. So just to touch up on a story from earlier on about Braun Strowman, as he, in fact, will have elbow surgery this coming Monday in Birmingham, Alabama, hence why he was written off television this past Monday night, and also the beatdown that he had on 3-on-1 being attacked on Raw, and to also further the storyline between himself and Baron Corbin, as it was made clear that the elbow injury is legit and will require surgery. which was brought into the storylines, and possibly give him an out, if you will, in case the amount of time that Strowman is taking to recover overlaps the TLC schedule, and hence possibly giving Corbin already the automatic victory via forfeit and making him the permanent Raw general manager. The hope is that this is a minor injury and can be worked around quickly, as they're also looking forward to, as they mentioned already on Raw, the match between Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman at the Royal Rumble for the Universal title. So WWE basically gave us a glance into the future. But again, all this could change. It could have been done intentionally just to get the crowd some hope that Strowman can return from all this and be the injured challenger and maybe not defeat the Beast at the Rumble for the title right around the time that the USADA testing pool expires, or is just wrapping up, I should say, as Lesnar is expected to return early 2019 to the UFC. But at the same time, the argument is that WWE is trying to make Lesnar look as strong as possible before his UFC return. And not that he needed it, but they placed the Universal title back on him. So I guess it was just time and place and on the unfortunate circumstance of Roman Reigns. So who knows what would have been, because everything changed once Roman Reigns made that announcement and just threw a monkey wrench in the whole situation, the whole storyline moving forward, all the angles moving forward. Not blaming Roman Reigns, but that was the kickoff point, and possibly as to why Lesnar was given the title back. Not that Strowman couldn't carry the load, but more heat and flipping Strowman back into a face. So there was a lot going on there. And now with Strowman out of the picture for now, he's guaranteed not to appear on Raw if he's going to go under the knife the same day. So we'll see how they follow this up. And if Baron Corbin is already declaring victory and just abusing whatever power he has now, assuming that the match won't take place at TLC between Corbin and Strowman, and that he will have full power of Raw. David Arquette, former WCW champion, was in a death match versus Nick Gage, who replaced the injured Joey Ryan, Arquette that is. And during the match, Arquette had his neck cut wide open by Gage after using a fluorescent light bulb that broke over his neck and bled profusely. Arquette did. This all took place during Joey Janela's LA Confidential event last weekend. I'm sorry, earlier in the week, on the 20th, I believe it was. If my timing is right there. I wrote down all this info minus the date of the event, but I believe it was on the 20th earlier in the week that this incident took place. Arquette was rushed to the hospital to get patched up and I believe stitched up as well. That part of the details was not given, but it was so bad and so eye-catching that even TMZ reported on this and showed the actual footage during one of their live broadcastings on Fox the very next day. Matter of fact, on the 21st, I caught it on YouTube, and they were there talking about, well, I know what's real and what isn't. I know this stuff is predetermined, but they clearly didn't use any of the wrestling terminologies or in the business's references. I get that they won't know about it, but instead of asking questions, it's just making themselves look like fools about, well, I thought it was this, I thought it was that, I didn't know this. Then you ask, there has to be at least one member of your staff there that's a fan, that's followed this for many years, and will know some of the ins and outs, and that accidents happen. Matter of fact, that's what Arquette would put in his statement release, as he entitled his tweet by saying, the main reason I got injured was because of my lack of experience. Don't try this at home. That was his opening tagline, but the actual statement about the situation was, as some of you might have seen, last week I was injured in a wrestling match, and I wanted to make sure to address the photos and videos that have surfaced of the event, as this is not the type of wrestling you watch on TV. I know it was violent and potentially bloody, but I truly did not know the extent of what I was participating in. However, I take full responsibility for putting myself in that situation. For the last 6 months, I have been training and competing in indie matches around the country, as wrestling is a passion of mine. I wanted to state again that this is not traditional wrestling, and I have the utmost respect for that sport. I also want to apologize to the professional wrestling world for any negative attention this might have brought forth over the weekend, and I have zero plans to be involved in a match like this again. I want to thank all the fans, friends, and family who are showing their love and support for the last few days. I'm looking forward to getting back into the ring under much more different circumstances in the near future. However, my priority and full-time dedication will always be acting and producing, and I look forward to sharing some of my exciting new projects in 2019 with love, David Arquette. So many people are now giving Mr. Arquette not only the benefit of the doubt, but assuming that he doesn't know anything in the wrestling business. I mean, he's been around it, at least on television, since 2000, so 18 years now. And before that, obviously, like many of us, a fan of the sport and followed it for many years before then. And of course, as time goes on, you learn about the business, whether you talk to someone who's already in it or you learn on your own accord by reading stories and gathering information along the way. But clearly, from this statement alone, I get that he knows what he got himself into eventually. Didn't realize at first, because how often do we hear or even see death matches anymore here in the States alone, that is. And he's right. I agree with him that is not wrestling. What CZW would do, what ECW used to do, and FMW and all of them, I get they were trying to be different and apart from traditional wrestling. I get that. We've heard that statements many times from Paul Heyman throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, but it's not something you can do all the time. And even if you did, it has to be toned down extremely to a point where it can even be aired. But that's just the world we live in now. To an extent, that's how the world we lived in then. And it's not for everybody. I get that. You know, I couldn't sit and watch a full Japanese death match from beginning to end, because what is it? This is still a wrestling match, isn't it? And I just can't see myself watching or see myself sitting to the end of the match. I just couldn't. This one was no different, even though I didn't see the entire match, just the main part where Arquette was cut open in the back of the neck. And by the way, he ended up returning to the hospital having more issues with his pain and bruising. I mean, it's a fluorescent light bulb. It doesn't sound like much. They're really light, really fragile, but it's still made of glass, people. I definitely wouldn't recommend this on anyone to see what I'm talking about. But if you haven't already, the clips are up on YouTube. And I will say viewer discretion is advised. So don't say I didn't warn you. In brighter news, congratulations are in order for Pete Dunne, as he welcomed his first child into the world, as he revealed on social media. The UK NXT champion is become a very proud papa at only 25 years old. I keep forgetting how young this man is. But kudos, mazel tov, all around for Pete Dunne, the new father of his first child. Also in better news, Hacksaw Jim Duggan was hospitalized and in an intensive care unit in South Carolina for undisclosed reasons even to this day. But Hacksaw updated everyone through social media of his condition and that things are looking great, and is currently getting out of ICU and hoping to be released from the hospital sometime this weekend if he hasn't already by this recording. So keep fighting the good fight there, tough guy, and feel better soon. This is interesting. According to PW Insider, Adidas, Adidas, the infamous sports shoe and clothing brand, is going after Alpha Entertainment for their trademark, for them trademarking their logo, which bears a striking similarity to the Adidas brand logo. I didn't realize that until this story, and if you haven't compared them yet, they really do look alike. Now, several of Adidas umbrella companies have asked for added time in pursuing the matter. However, Alpha Entertainment was launched in 2017 as a separate entity from the WWE after it was announced that Vince McMahon would be rebooting the XFL, which will be helmed by Oliver Luck as its CEO and commissioner, and former NFL player and father of current Colts quarterback Andrew Luck. There really isn't much to Alpha's Entertainment current website minus the XFL announcement and brief bio on Vince McMahon, which simply states Vince McMahon, founder, Alpha Entertainment, and chairman of the board and chief executive officer of WWE Incorporated, is a third-generation promoter who has made WWE into a global phenomenon it is today. So really nothing new there, just an extra bio to click on from Vince McMahon. But yeah, a very striking similarity between the two logos. I didn't realize it myself until this was brought to my attention. So hopefully to avoid any potential lawsuits here, Alpha Entertainment could just tweak the look of it so slightly so it won't resemble Adidas at all. I mean, there are ways to avoid being sued. People just, admit your mistake there if there was one that you thought you made, and just make the necessary changes. Simple. John Cena will be making his return to the ring in the next month as part of the WWE's holiday tour, as Cena has primarily stayed in Hollywood this year and is focused on building his personal brand. But as he always says, the WWE is his home and will be returning home for the holidays next month. The WWE is part of the final stretch of major house shows, or live events, if you will, before the new year. And just to name off a few appearance dates, he's expected to appear for December 26th house show at Madison Square Garden. The very next night will be a Smackdown house show at the Nassau Coliseum. On December 28th, a Smackdown live event at Baltimore, Maryland. On the 30th, for another Smackdown house show, will be actually out here at the Amway Arena. And then from the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, for an actual Raw show for the New Year's on January 7th. So Cena's been keeping real busy in Hollywood. Of course, he'll be promoting the upcoming Bumblebee movie real soon, as it's expected to debut next month, just in time for the holidays. So kudos to John Cena. Even more kudos and respect for standing his ground for not partaking in the event that took place in parts unknown just a few weeks ago. And yeah, he's definitely earned my respects for that. Earlier this year, as many of you may remember, and I apologize if I butcher the man's name, but Hiromu Takahashi, the professional wrestler's career was forever altered as he wound up breaking his neck in the match against Dragon Lee at the G1 special in San Francisco. And this led for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion to vacate his title. Since then, New Japan Pro Wrestling has been quiet on his injury and recovery. The latest word comes out of this week's Wrestling Observer that it's not particularly good news, unfortunately. And the updated word, quote unquote, is that New Japan isn't sure whether or not Takahashi will be able to return to the ring at all. There is currently no return scheduled date, and it's looking as if it might up being a career-ending injury, unfortunately. And I do remember watching this, and it was, I believe it was a German release suplex, and Takahashi lands on his head, twerking his neck a bit, and not only that, he slid a few inches across the ring mat before eventually falling face first to the ground. And he somehow continued and ended the match, but clearly was in a lot of pain, holding his neck and head in place, and was stretched out. And it was less than 24 hours later that it was reported he broke his neck. I hope there is a way for a comeback for this. I wouldn't rush it, but give the man enough time to recover and see what doctors diagnose him with, and hopefully it won't be the end. I mean, I really did enjoy his work up until that injury, and it would be a hell of a way to go out if that's the case. But our best well wishes go out to Takahashi to get well soon. While some fans have speculated that the upcoming Fox television deal with the WWE will see the end of the brand split, that likely will not be the case. The latest information comes out from this week's Wrestling Observer that the new deal starts in October of 2019, and Fox reportedly wants the WWE brand split to continue. The reasoning for the brand split is that Fox doesn't want to promote wrestlers that would only end up on the Smackdown team, but also appearing on Raw on a different network of the USA, which is owned by their rival company, NBC Universal, ironically. As such, they want split crews. The current plan is for both Raw and SmackDown to have separate production crews, and that house shows will start airing on a WWE network. Meltzer also says that the SmackDown team will do the live Friday shows and whatever Saturday house shows that will air. Meanwhile, the Raw team is scheduled for Sundays, whether pay-per-views or Sunday house shows, along with Monday Night Raw. So a lot of production work, or a lot of production plans, are in the works moving forward once this Fox deal finally takes place next October of 2019. And really finally, or taking advantage, I should say, of the network, because it's great to see biographies and documentaries here and there, but you have the capability of tapping into live feeds. And mind you, house shows can be overdoing it because a lot of it are really copy and paste of what was seen already on Raw and SmackDown. But I'm sure they're aware of this, they being WWE, and might want to switch it up a little bit or change it up a bit, where you want to save your good stuff for television. So rather than have a week-long house show episodes of, for example, Rollins versus Ambrose all the time, you could switch it up and have Ziggler taking on Rollins and Ambrose taking on McIntyre, just to switch it up. Not that two heels will constantly have house shows all the time, but switch it up. You have nothing to lose. On house shows, live events, you really have nothing to lose. But the constant copy and pasting of house shows and live events in the same week can be too repetitive. And hopefully they have some kind of plan in play, or at least a plan B if things don't follow through. Meltzer also reported about Dolph Ziggler and his potential appearance at this Saturday's STARCADE event, as Ziggler has a foot injury and may be back within a week. Ziggler will be evaluated again sometime today, matter of fact. And he's going to, as far as Meltzer's concerned, going to be at Cincinnati for STARCADE. He will be evaluated there as well. So there's a chance that he maybe even be at the show if he's okay enough. It's not a serious injury, as Dave Meltzer puts it and believes. They thought it was a break, which would have been a somewhat severe injury and possibly lead into surgery. But he did not have a broken foot, so whatever it is isn't that bad, and they expect him to be back pretty soon. And speaking of STARCADE, and this really surprised me, not so much that we have another pay-per-view to go through, but they did this they didn't do it last year as it was expected to, and many fans were upset. But I guess cooler heads prevailed, as the WWE will now air STARCADE in its entirety. It will actually take place tonight, but will air on a tape delay tomorrow night on Sunday, as the event will be recorded. And this is a cool move, as STARCADE has always been a fixture for Thanksgiving, or for the Thanksgiving holidays, and then shortly after was Survivor Series. So it makes sense to finally have both shows under the same umbrella for once, and to air it, because I heard that last year's STARCADE show was really good. Never got to see it. No one did, a matter of fact, as it never aired on the network, much less even have full matches on their social media pages, especially YouTube. But nothing. It was just clips, highlights, and that's about it. So as it stands right now, the current card, which I'm pretty sure is subject to change, but we'll see. Seth Rollins is set to face Dean Ambrose for the Intercontinental Championship match in a street fight. And this match might be changed, but considering, and ironically, the surgery won't be until Monday. But Braun Strowman would take on Baron Corbin. No stipulation. It's just a one-on-one straight-up match. Also, in a steel cage match, Samoa Joe, who I mentioned earlier, may or may not be nursing a foot injury himself, would take on AJ Styles. Miz TV will have the United States champion Shinsuke Nakamura and Rey Mysterio as guests, as Rey Mysterio will face Shinsuke Nakamura for the United States Championship. In a SmackDown Tag Team title match, the Bar will defend against the New Day. Finn Balor will take on Drew McIntyre. The Miz faces Rusev with Lana. And a special concert is expected, as Elias will perform with Ric Flair. And also scheduled to appear is Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, and mentioned Dolph Ziggler. So all of this is subject to change due to injury, due to the Halloween schedules and plans, and whoever else still on vacation or across country. So we shall see exactly who appears and what takes place as STARCADE, well, WWE STARCADE, will debut on the network tomorrow on Sunday afternoons or Sunday night, no time. But I'm assuming will be on demand as well, so keep an eye out for that. As I wrap up the show here today, just have a few more stories to get through. And happy to report, and I was so glad to hear this, based from MemphisFlyer.com, that the Mid-South Coliseum has been saved, according to the group that has worked for years to preserve the structure. Demolishing, I should say, of the Coliseum was a central part of previous plans to transform the Memphis Fairgrounds into a youth sports mecca. But state leaders gave their blessings on a new plan Monday that, at the very least, leaves the building in place. That was enough for the Grassroots Coliseum Coalition to celebrate, as they stated the Coliseum is officially saved. They wrote on their Facebook and Twitter this past Monday. So glad to hear that this actually took place, as the Mid-South Coliseum is historic in the history of pro wrestling. And I wish the same could have been said about the Sportatorium down in Texas, but not everyone is a wrestling fan. But at least the Mid-South Coliseum was spared, and hopefully under the right management can continue on standing, even if it's not meant never to be used again as a wrestling arena. But it does have its heritage, it does have its history, and it should stand, whether as a landmark or a monument, but definitely deserves to still be standing on his own roots. It was also reported by the Observer about Brock Lesnar's potential opponent at WrestleMania. Now, this probably shites all over my thoughts of removing Lesnar from the Universal Championship, but Wrestling Observer believes that it will be Seth Rollins, more than likely be the one to challenge Lesnar for the Universal title at WrestleMania 35 from MetLife Stadium. Rollins is currently preparing to defend his Intercontinental Championship against Dean Ambrose at TLC, as I mentioned earlier, and possibly, according to the Observer, would drop the IC title to Ambrose at some point, if not at TLC, but along the way heading towards WrestleMania. And Brock and Rollins are no strangers to one another, as they previously were involved in the WrestleMania 31 main event when Rollins cashed in his Money in the Bank that year against Lesnar, but it was Roman Reigns who, I believe, took the fall. No, I apologize. It was Lesnar. He's the one that got the curb stomp. Roman Reigns was thrown out of the ring, and Rollins actually pinned the champion and stealing the opportunity from Roman Reigns at the time. So, okay, yeah, I don't get as many head bashes by steel chairs or candlesticks, but, sometimes my memory can be a little bit fuzzy. It was only about 4 years ago. So, yeah, it's all right. and I'll close with this. It was a very despicable move, even though some consider it an accident, others consider it blatant. However, it was such a big story that even the New York Post decided to chime in and report on it. But back on the 20th, when was this reported? The Post would say that the rules have always been a little looser in Mexican wrestling, but this was a brick too far, as they entitled this, as Cuervo, the Raven out of Puerto Rico, was knocked unconscious and reportedly had his skull fractured after being blindsided by a brutal blow to the back of his head against the match with Angel o Demonio, or Angel or Demon, at the Lucha Libre Boom Show in Mexico. The Raven was standing on the outside of the ring on the arena floor when his opponent launched the missile of a cement brick, to the back of the head during this, they call it a death match, but I think it was more of a no-holds-barred match, but whatever. And the match was immediately called off after referees and officials immediately realized the situation as a solid concrete brick, or a piece of a pavement, matter of fact. It wasn't determined at the time, but I believe it was more of a cinder block after closer examinations. But this guy, this Angel Demon, he just launched. I mean, he picked up this piece of brick over his head and just threw this thing like a basketball. And the Raven didn't see it coming. He had no way to protect himself, and he just dropped. I mean, dropped like a bad habit. Face first, landed awkwardly. It looked like his body went immediately stiff because he was knocked out. And by the time the cameraman came around and cut to that side of the ring, there was a long streak of blood stain on the floor, and behind him by his feet was the piece of center block that was used. And he stood up, to his credit, the Raven did. He stood up to his feet, but lights were on, but no one was home, kind of thing. And the officials and referees there immediately realized what was happening and escorted the man out for medical attention. I mean, I want to believe that some of this was predetermined and that that piece of brick was going to be used, but not like this. I mean, there's the back of the head, and then there's the actual back. And even that could have caused some serious injuries from the height that it was thrown and the force, and not to mention the weight of the brick itself. I mean, there really isn't no part of the body that you can, learn how to take basically a brick bump, let's call it. There is no way. And I personally wouldn't even use or be involved with a brick. Well, there's a legit shoot brick involved. Count me out. I wouldn't take that chance. I don't care if I break my baby toe in the process. I am not taking that chance. I mean, there's entertainment. There's even that fine line. But where's the entertainment when someone gets hurt? This severely, matter of fact. Breaking a baby toe for the sake of entertainment. Okay, they enjoyed it, but I ain't doing this shit again. That's for sure. So what happens next? It was announced at the hospital where the Raven was taken to that surgery was immediately performed, and they operated to remove a blood clot in his head. So they basically saved his life, and now is in recovery. The promoter of the show said that he had surgery to drain the clot. He is out of danger. He is in intensive care and is responding satisfactory. The manager of the Raven, Victor Orayo, announced on Facebook that the wrestler was recovering well. Hopefully that wasn't his exact words, the wrestler. We know who it is. We are informed that the operation to the Raven was a success. The clot was removed and is stable. He'll go on to say, thank you to all the prayers and good vibe to everyone that reached out. And there were reports of a benefit show that will be held in Mexico this coming week, a matter of fact, to help him recover, or cover, I should say, all of Cuervo's medical costs, as, you know, any kind of surgery to the head. It's not cheap. And Angel Demon said he was aiming for his back, but did not have the accuracy. He'll actually hold a press conference and will publicly state, I apologize to the entire public because, first of all, I am a professional and did not mean for this to happen. He said that the promoter, that is, Angel Demon, has been suspended indefinitely by the Boxing and Wrestling Commission of the state of Mexico and has been widely condemned. So there's no place that this man can go, possibly looking for work, that he won't be looked at with rolling eyes or disdain. This really hit home for a lot of professional wrestlers, including one, Kurt Angle, who wrote, "Give me 10 seconds with that stupid MFer that threw the brick. Shouldn't it be anywhere near the business?" I agree. Accident or not, I mean, there's just no good thing that can come out of having these kinds of matches. At least when it came to back in 2002, I believe it was, where the NWO just debuted in the WWF, and one of their first targets was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it was Scott Hall who broke what appeared to be a cinder block over Stone Cold's knee that was wrapped around the ring post. And Austin sold that like his leg was ripped off his body. But Scott Hall did a great job giving the illusion that, one, the cinder block was extremely heavy, and two, that it was made of basically cement. And when it shattered, that thing turned more into a cloud of smoke rather than debris of pieces of brick. But obviously it wasn't a cinder block. It was, I wouldn't say styrofoam, but definitely some kind of material that breaks away easily, and gave the illusion that, yeah, this guy just broke his leg and probably be out of action. But no, Austin continued all the way through WrestleMania 18. But just saying that there are ways to get around that. If you still want to come up with that illusion, then if it was a working cinder block that Angel Demon was going to use on the Raven, or the Raven, that, yeah, you're giving the illusion that this man just got hit over the head with a cinder block. But even though the block turned into a cloud of smoke, but I think the response and the reaction would immediately go to like, oh my God, he was just hit on the head by a dust cloud, but he was hit on the head. They'll go back to revealing the magician's secrets after the fact. But no, guys, no. Hopefully, moving forward after this unfortunate incident, that I guess in the world of lucha libre, they don't try this ever again, and it's not worth the injury, not worth the risks by putting one of your performance in that position. And now the man has to recover. And who knows, even if he makes a full recovery, if he'll be allowed to return to his passion of pro wrestling. So I also offer a get well soon, a speedy recovery to the Raven out down in Mexico. And hopefully he himself will release a statement sometime soon, and I'll be able to bring it to you in a near future episode of the Good Old JM Report. Speaking of which, as I wrap up here, next weekend I have an interview, an exclusive one that is, with Hollywood. No, not Hogan. I'm not there yet, but Hollywood from the gorgeous ladies of wrestlings. That's right, the original Glow Girl, Hollywood herself, is going to grant me some time and speak exclusively to JM on another episode of Talking with JM next week on November 30th. And I will upload that interview as soon as possible the very same day. And hopefully you guys could chime in and let me know what you thought of the interview itself by leaving comments, not only here, but also on the interview itself later on when the link is available. And I'm really excited, looking forward to this, and curious to see what kind of response you would have with some of my questions. They're not really cutthroat or, paint them against the corner type of deal, but no. It's more about getting to know who is Hollywood before and after Glow. Now that Glow has been revived, if you will, with Netflix and their TV series as they're working on a season 3. And I believe early next year, by springtime, it will debut. And I'm also looking forward to that. We'll get her thoughts on that. We'll get her thoughts on what she's up to nowadays as well. As once again, the next episode of Talking with JM will be with Hollywood herself next week, November 30th. So everyone set your calendars. And once again, I'm really excited and looking forward to that interview. But until then, everyone, I mentioned earlier, hopefully you have enjoyed your time off with family and friends for the Thanksgiving weekend. I know there's some time left, and enjoy the rest of it. I know I did, even though with a heavy heart. But again, life goes on. It's not much we can do by stopping the clock. And we can't anyway, even if we wanted to. But everyone enjoy. I guess enjoy the leftovers. I know I will once I get home.